everybody. We just wanted to do another little update about our adoption and kind of where we're at in the process. So we thought we would do some frequently asked questions that we've been getting in regards to adoption and the whole process and everything like that. So, yeah, let's start.
Oh. So the first question we've gotten a lot was, why did we choose the particular agency that we're going with? Um, and we haven't really told people much yet, just because we haven't officially partnered with them. But we had sent out a couple emails to different agencies, just kind of like a blanket email asking for more info. And this agency, we just had a really positive response from. They were the only one that reached out to us to do like a phone interview, and they answered all of our questions. They were super friendly and warm, and yeah, it just felt like a good fit from like the first 30 seconds.
Another thing, too, is we have found out, which some of you know, that a lot of the agencies that we reached out to actually are not doing adoptions during COVID, which is kind of surprising to us, and so it kind of dwindled down some of the agencies we had thought about working with. Um,
And that was because they mandate like in person training, and they can't do in person training during
which
COVID.
makes
So
sense. Yeah. So right now they're, I would assume, reaching out to families that have already adopted and passed the trainings and things like that. So
yeah.
yeah, so this is an agency that has all their trainings online, and then ones that would be in person will be done over Zoom or something like that. So that obviously helped kind of dwindle the agency down as well. And then also, this agency is pretty small, and so we really liked how personal they are. They have a social worker that specifically works with, I think we mentioned this last time, works with the birth family, and then one that works with the adoptive family, and they kind of like switch throughout the process. So it's just a smaller, more personal agency. So not as many adoptions in a year, which means your wait time to adopt is shorter. Trying to think what else. We liked, obviously, we mentioned this last time, that they do a lot of counseling with the birth mother and her decision to adopt, or whatever decision she chooses. And so we really liked that aspect of it as well. So,
Mm-hmm. Next question is, when do we think we will actually get a child? So that's, I mean, kind of a hard question to answer, just because we don't get to choose a child. Kind of the child chooses us, sort of, or the child's mother chooses us. So um, right now, we are still working on the application. There's a lot of different papers we have to put together, and background checks, and fire inspection, and just a lot of things that we hadn't anticipated. But we are working on that. We want to get that done soon, so that we can have the home study done. And then once the home study's done and we're approved, then we can actually be we can have a profile made to show to possible mothers who would want to pair with us. The whole process, this agency told us, takes about 12 to 18 months, depending on how quickly we get through the application and training and home study, and then how quickly a mother chooses our profile.
yeah, so a lot of that depends, like, right now it depends on how quick we get things done in the beginning process, but then from there, once your profile's up, it basically depends on the birth family that chooses you. So the birth mother could be very early in her pregnancy, or she could be like very far along later in her pregnancy. So there's a lot of factors that go into that as well. So we really don't fully know. We would assume at least within the next 18 months. But
We're hoping by the end of next year. I would,
yeah,
yeah, because there are some things that we're going to be doing financially to kind of prepare that would be most convenient or beneficial if it happens next year.
yeah.
So
So we don't fully know the answer to
we
that.
don't
But
know, but at least next year. um, Another question we get is, why didn't we choose to foster or do foster to adopt? It was something that we talked about at the beginning. Foster to adopt obviously is a lot cheaper. Fostering is free. I mean, actually the government pays you to foster a child, just to take care of them. And if you're foster to adopt, they cover the adoption charges as well. However, the whole point of foster care is reunification with the birth family. So there's no guarantee that a child that we would foster, we would actually get to adopt them. And it's more often than not, and this is something we'll address with our next question, but fostering involves older kids, um,
Usually.
not babies. And um, especially for my work, I only get time off for paternity leave if it's an adoption or a childbirth. So if we just fostered, I wouldn't get that same time off.
Which is something that we companies need to work on, because I think that'd be really helpful. But I think there is a lot of like misconceptions about fostering and foster to adopt. So a lot of people have been asking us like, well, why don't you just foster to adopt? Then you can adopt the child, and even if a child is most likely in that foster to adopt situation, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to be adopted. Um, so, like Vince said, the goal is always for the child to be reunified with family, or like with birth parents, or with family, like kinship placement is what they call it. Um, and so it's never a guarantee. Those of you know, like I specifically work at a place with child welfare agency, and we see it all the time where like people think they'll get to adopt a child and they won't, or foster families coming in and out all the time, and it's such a great thing. I just think that in the time of our lives, we're not ready for that, and what that would look like for us. Something that also comes a lot with fostering is a lot of like unknowns about the child sometimes, and we
Older
will
children.
older children specifically are most likely the foster to adopt situation. um, and so I think we just realized that we are not fully capable and prepared for that at this time. I think too, just knowing that we have been struggling with infertility, we've been wanting to have an infant, and so I think that's just kind of the time we're at right now in our lives. And I think with just having the infertility problems and going through that, which was really hard, I think going through the fostering and knowing that the goal is for them to go home, which is fantastic, I just don't think we're ready for that. If that makes sense. I don't. We
And I
can
don't know if
definitely
I
answer
don't
more
know if
questions
we
on
ever
that.
will, but at this time, we just feel that God was calling us to adopt.
Yeah.
So, next question: why does adoption cost so much? We wondered this a lot too. Um, there are some states, like we have friends from Nebraska, who are telling us how like adoption is completely subsidized. They try and make it free so that kids don't wait to be adopted. Um, Adoption is expensive for a couple of reasons. One is obviously there's a lot of legal fees because it is a legal process where you're gaining custody of a child. So there's all that. Um, when a social worker comes to do the home study, you're kind of paying for that service, for them to kind of evaluate you and interview you.
Background checks cost
Yeah,
money.
things like that. And then probably one of the biggest parts of the cost is a lot of the adoption fees will go to help support the birth mother. So, healthcare costs, sometimes housing costs, counseling, different things like that, which is really great that, a birth mother doesn't have to worry about all of those things as they're giving up their child. That's already hard enough as it is, and then on top of that, for them to like continue to pay all the bills that are involved with pregnancy. So yeah,
Yeah, I think if you think about it, I don't know, it's somewhat helpful for me to think about, okay, if we were having a child biologically, like the cost of that, like there's obviously insurance involved with all the medical stuff. No, it is obviously not cheap to have a child, even with insurance, but there's also this added other portion and added other family involved in our birth story. And so
mm-hmm.
that's where a lot of the cost comes in. But it is really expensive. I think I think that's the hard part of being like, well, if we had just fostered, then we could have, done this in a different route. But I think just with us feeling called to adopt and obviously so many people supporting us just has been a blessing. So, yes, it is expensive. And our agency, which we mentioned last time, does like a fee schedule and kind of chunks out the cost a little bit differently than others. And so, um, yeah, they made it a little bit easier in some regards. So.
Next question. Are we specifically saying either gender or race of a possible adoptable child?
Sorry, my phone keeps dinging. If you guys can hear
Should have turned it off.
that, I forgot.
um, we're not specifying gender, race. It's interesting when we did the application. There was a very, very long part where we had to kind of specify like what kinds of medical issues we would be willing to deal with, and that was hard to answer those questions. But as far as gender or race, we are looking to adopt an infant, but beyond that, we don't care. Black, white, boy, girl, it doesn't matter.
I think that's something too that a lot of people don't realize is you can have an option. Specifically, I didn't think about like gender being an option, but it definitely is an option that you can choose from. I think our agency is maybe not letting us choose the gender.
No, you can because it was on the questionnaire.
Oh, maybe there was another agency we worked with that they weren't.
I think other agencies don't.
Just because they were struggling to get placements. Yeah. So open to gender, race, all of the above. Definitely like wanting to do as much research as we can with the possibility of adopting a different race, because obviously like that is very different for us, and that's important to look into those things. So we've been reading lots of books and just looking into information on what that looks like and the community we live in and what opportunities there are for children of different races amongst our community. The rate of children that are African American that are adopted is very high, and so the possibility of us adopting a child of African American descent is pretty high. So we're just keeping an open mind, on like what that'll look like for us, and just filling our lives with people that'll be great mentors and support in that regard. So definitely something on our radar, and we're thinking about a lot for sure.
Next question: why did we want to adopt an infant versus an older child? And this kind of goes back to the question about why aren't we fostering? There definitely are some misconceptions about fostering in terms of what your relationship will be like with the child, especially if they're older. Have they been in other foster homes? What was their life like before? But that is a concern of ours. Both of us having worked in human services, we're well aware of what can happen if a child endures certain traumas as a child. And I think, kind of what Ellen was saying before, we've been trying to have an infant of our own, and I think for our first child, I think that's just what we want. That's what we feel God has called us to. Now maybe in the future God will change our hearts to want to adopt or even foster an older child, and some of the challenges that could come along with that. Not that adopting an infant is going to be not a challenge, but I think at this time it doesn't present the same challenge that an older child would.
Yeah. If any of you are wanting, this is a little like side note, but if any of you have been thinking about fostering, let me know, because my agency I work with, the Buckeye Ranch, has their own foster care agency within it. So we actually have a location in Cincinnati as well as Columbus and kind of all over. So if anybody's wanting some more information on fostering, let me know. We just specifically feel like right now we're not called to foster. So we're going towards the adoption route and what that looks like. So
the last question was kind of like, what does the process look like? When does it get finalized? I think we kind of broke down some of the fees last time we made a video, or maybe if we've talked to you in person. First we finish the application, get a home study, that at that time it's $5,000. Then after the home study's been approved, there's another $10,000 payment to make our profile and kind of activate our account. And then once we're, chosen by a birth mother and we actually have custody of the child, then that's another 10,000 to finalize. So when the child is actually born, the mother has 72 hours to kind of decide whether or not this is, what they want to do. And then after that 72 hours, they sign a form that's basically like a permanent surrender. So once they sign that, they're giving up custody of their child, regardless, and we take custody of the child. And then after we have had the child for 6 months, and the agency is checking in with us, making sure things are going well, then we go back to, I'm guessing, like a family court,
Yeah.
and it's finalized.
Yeah, so we were a little nervous. You hear stories about, the mother changing their mind or things like that. And so we got some comfort in knowing that there is that 72 hours that the mother has a choice to say, like,
and it actually doesn't happen very often. According to
right.
like when we asked this agency that we're working with, like, how common is it for a mother to change their mind? She said that she could only think of a handful of times in the last couple of years.
And I think that's part of the reason why we liked this agency, because they are working with counseling the mother through that choice. And so by the time this woman is giving birth, she has a very clear understanding of what she's doing and the choice that she's making and why she's making that choice.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously gets the choice to choose the family that she wants her child to go to. So that's another portion of it as well, is that those choices for the birth family.
Yeah, we'll have the opportunity. I don't know if any of you are familiar with adoption or how at least how adoptions used to work, but they would make like little booklets that that would be put in front of a mother, or like a binder with just pictures and little profiles and stuff. This agency is all digital, it's all online, and so it's almost like we'll be making a social media account where we have pictures, but we can also put a video, and we can write a statement about our plans for how to raise a child, and that way a birth mother can just go on this website and look at all those profiles, and we don't have to worry about paying for books or this,
or the social
binder,
worker doesn't have to like carry our book to like a million different homes or hospitals
right.
for this, for all these birth mothers. So it makes the process of like choosing a family much easier, because we could have 3 mothers looking at our profile at a time or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So right now we're just doing all those beginning steps. Once the next 10,000 goes in, our profile goes up and someone chooses us, and then
10,000 at the end to finalize.
At the end, the finalization.
There's possibility of like other extra costs. They tell us to budget, what was it, like another 10,000 possibly, and yeah, we'll anticipate that and handle it as it comes, but
which could include like traveling costs. Like they partner with a few other states, and so there's a possibility that our child could be born in a different state, so that would mean us traveling, hotels, food, those normal things, gas. So so we'll see what happens. But if you guys have any other questions, let us know. Thank you guys so much for following kind of our journey and our story, and asking these questions, because it's really good for us to talk about these things and for other people to know about it as well. So
alrighty,
thank you guys so much.
See you guys later.